Good morning. Welcome to 2021 Joint EuCNC and 6G Summit. The COVID-19 situation, which largely affects international travels, has prevented us to carry out this event physically in the beautiful city of Porto. We will, however, try to make you feel as Porto as much as we can. The EuCNC conference is well known, and this year it is merged with 6G Summit. This merging aims at enabling discussions on beyond 5G and 6G, hence the motto selected for the conference on the road to 6G. The conference started yesterday with outstanding workshops and tutorials addressing topics such as spectrum, hardware, security, remote coverage, private networks, verticals, terahertz communications, and non-terrestrial networks. The materials of these excellent sessions are or will be available in the conference platform. The next 3 days, starting today, will consist of scientific presentations, special sessions, keynotes, and panels. The almost 150 scientific presentations were selected for submissions or from submissions coming from 33 countries, and they are organized in 9 technical tracks. The special sessions will address thematic topics including Europe-China collaboration in 5G and beyond, advances on Open RAN and 6G. We will also have 4 notable keynote speakers: Michael Peters, addressing antennas and related technologies for operation in terahertz band; Manuel Ramalhianes, focusing on the digital society; Robert Verdon, discussing the relationship between IoT and 6G; and Peter Vetter, showing us how to augment the human potential in 6G era. 3 relevant panels will discuss how to move from visions to system requirements in 6G, components and hardware required for 6G, and prospects for the vertical industry. We'll also have 2 important complementary sessions, the first one will be the welcome reception, which will be used to celebrate the 30th conference anniversary, and that will be held today at 5:30 p.m. Then we are going to have another very important special session that will be an information session on smart networks and services, and that will be held on Friday after lunch. All the conference information is available in the platform, including articles, videos, link for the sessions, networking tools that you can use, but also, and very importantly, an exhibition area consisting of virtual booths having very nice, interesting information that we'd like you to visit. We'd like to thank the authors for submitting their works, the track chairs and reviewers for the quality of their contributions, our supporters, the European Commission, IEEE, COMSOP, EuCNC, the Portuguese Presidency of the Council of the European Union. Also, a very special thanks go to our patrons. Without them, it would be not possible to have a free registration event like this. NOS, which is Diamond Patron, Huawei, the Platinum Patron, Nokia, Gold Patron, Virginia Diodes, Silver Patron, and Ericsson, Bronze Patron. Finally, I'd like to emphasize the hard work of the local organizing committee and colleagues from University of Oulu that joined forces with us organizing this event. And I would like to thank them for their enthusiasm and for relevant contributions for the organization of this conference. We hope you enjoy the conference. Let me now introduce to you Matilatva from University of Oulu, Finland, and Vice Chair of the Steering Committee of the conference. Mati, please, floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Greetings from 6G Flagship, Oulu, Finland. 6G Flagship is one of the first major 6G programs globally. We started already 3 years ago, and as a part of our research program, we saw the necessity to start to organize an international event where different industries and experts can present their views on 6G early enough to really pave the way for researchers to exchange ideas and targets for the next generation system. That turned out to be quite successful, and after that we were invited by European Commission to team up with EuCNC and start to co-organize 60 Summit in conjunction with EuCNC, which we are witnessing today. So I would like to thank this opportunity provided to us by Commission persons, by steering committee of EuCNC. I would like to also thank the local organizers, Manuel, everybody, Luis Correa. It has been really great pleasure to work with you organizing this really unique event, which seems to be really successful when looking at the number of registrations so far. I wish all the participants to enjoy the event, and let's start the debate today on future connectivity challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Mati. Let me now introduce to you Piers O'Donoghue, the Director for the Future Networks, DG Connect from European Commission, and also General Co-Chair of the conference, that will let us know how Europe should shape its digital future. Mr. O'Donoghue, please, virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. I'm really sad too that we can't be together in Porto, but I would like to thank the organizers, our co-hosts, very much for all of the efforts that you put into organizing this very important conference. The EuCNC is our flagship event in order for us to discuss with a community of developers, researchers, and the industry on the development of communications technologies in Europe. So it's great that we are able to have this virtual event, and I hope to see you all very near in the future. What I want to do as co-chair is put a frame in terms of EU policy perspective to just drive home the message to you how important the work that we do together on the deployment of 5G, the further development of 5G and beyond, just as we kick off our work on the development of 6G, so that Europe can continue to be in the lead on these critical technologies. So recently, Europe has put our ambitions for digital technologies, the next generation internet, and a human-centric digital environment for our citizens. We've put it into the form of a digital compass, identifying what we need to achieve and by when in the next decade. Because as many of you may know, this European Commission under President von der Leyen has identified our climate change goals, that is to say the Green Deal, and digital as the two twin priorities of her Commission. And we have to deliver on that, hence the digital decade. So I'd just like to talk very briefly about this and some of the tools that we will be using to support the development and the deployment and take-up of digital technologies and services, and then really emphasize the role of 5G and 6G, particularly the research and innovation that we do together. Now, it's become a truism that the pandemic has just driven home to many of us how important digital technologies are and connectivity for our business lives, for our private lives, that is to say, for the economy and for society in Europe. But to actually harness that, and in any event to make sure that these technologies are bringing benefits to all sectors of the economy, we really have to ensure that it is in good shape, that it is able to give the productivity and connectivity advantages that Europe needs, and of course to contribute to the climate change targets that we have to become climate neutral, that it supports a circular and resilient economy. Hence, this map towards 2030. How do we see ourselves? What do we need to achieve? And you will see this in the communication from the Commission, the Digital Decade communication, which gave a clear idea as to what we want to achieve, the vision for that, but also how we will deliver and the governance of this approach. And what we're here today is to talk about the digital vision. In identifying the digital decade, we had 4 cardinal points. It's not a coincidence. It's not something that needs to be overlooked, that the first point was skills. Europe is in bad need of skilled specialists in technologies, but also the population at large needs to have an increase and improvement in their digital skills. More close to home for many of us, of course, we have very ambitious targets with the core importance of infrastructures for connectivity, for the components and particularly the semiconductors that build up and form a nucleus to the connectivity equipment, including, of course, reaching out to the edge and beyond with IoT sensors and all of the smart equipment that we will have in the future. Plus the platforms and services, the technology services that we require on the connectivity platform, particularly cloud, but now in its new form, edge and far edge computing, all to serve the harnessing of data, particularly its combination with artificial intelligence and general computing needs. Then there are targets with regard to businesses and with regard to government services. But in all four areas, before we even get into the details, it's clear that 5G and beyond, the low latency, high bandwidth, and highly secure communications infrastructures that provides are essential for so many of our digital goals, for so many areas, whether it is in the classroom and education, leading to the farm and the field, but all of the economic activities and social activities in between. Now, very quickly, I'm not going to go through all of this, but just to say that in planning for this period, even in the last commission, we have now increased the number of tools available, particularly funding tools, because an awful lot of this activity needs at least seed funding, if not investment in the long run. So we have strong research elements, continuing on from Horizon 20 into what is now Horizon Europe, which many of you are familiar with, but other programs, including and particularly the Digital Europe program. But one thing I just mentioned here under the national, regional, local is the RRF. What does that stand for? That's the Recovery and Resilience Funds agreed by heads of government, which is a massive injection of financing and loans into the European economy to help us to meet the challenges and overcome the serious impact which COVID has had on the economy, but also to modernize, to scale up and connect our economies, our digital economies, for growth, competitiveness, innovation, and societal well-being in the future. So just to look at those for a moment, again, there's a lot here for you to see, but the Digital Europe program is new, just as the RRF is. And this is something which is, shall we say, under our control, working with member states, but working with industry and other stakeholders. We have a series of important strategic objectives which we need to meet, which you will see mapped very closely to the objectives of the Digital Compass, including, of course, again, digital skills. But if you look at artificial intelligence and data, this is where the very important common data spaces and the platforms and infrastructures to support so much of Digital Europe that we need to focus on when we look at the funding that is available through procurement, in some cases through grants, in order really to kickstart the economy, to help European companies to work together, to get economies of scale, but also to break down borders, ensure that we have one digital space, which is Europe. Another of the funds which is being repurposed is the Connecting Europe facility. This is also particularly focusing on cross-border cooperation, but in this case, very important to all of us working in the 5G area, because one of the test large-scale projects that we have at a European scale are the cross-border 5G corridors, where we, with national authorities, including road authorities, and with the private sector, will be investing in the development of these 5G cross-border corridors, in many cases transport paths traveling across rural and lesser served areas, which will kickstart the rollout of connectivity, kickstart the development of radio access networks, but also allow us already to branch off that with edge nodes, etc., into all of the territory of the European Union and become a real proving ground for the deployment of advanced 5G services. So there, in the rural areas particularly, there is a clear absence of investment plans in the short term, which is why also we will be helping Europe to ensure that there isn't a failure of the market to develop 5G elsewhere. So this will be funded through the CEF. It will also be able to link into the recovery funds that I've spoken about, but also long-term investment funding such as InvestEU. And then there is, of course, the activities that many of you are familiar with under our research framework, in this case now Horizon Europe. One element of that is in looking for a Europe fit for the digital age, we have specific focus on partnerships. And one of those will be in relation to the development and deployment of 5G and work starting with regard to 6G, where we need already to think about those interconnected and resilient software-defined networks of the future, reconfigurable, which will provide all of the performance qualities that we require in terms of latency, as well, of course, as security and bandwidth and speed, which will be essential for so much of the technology applications that we see coming in the very near future. This combines with work on AI and robotics, but also with regard to computing technologies in general, where again, our work on the low power processor means that Europe should be more in control of the value chain of digital technologies to allow us to assert ourselves, to supply ourselves if necessary, but also to be competitive in what we hope will be an open and joined up world. And that leads us closer and closer to where we are now. We have been working with European companies, leading industries with regard to cloud and connectivity and telecommunications, as well as major users of data and of these cloud, edge, and communication services, in an alliance which will be formed in the coming months to actually implement a roadmap for advanced edge computing, which will connect to the 5G networks and which will provide the data platform, the compute platform for the next generation of applications and services for European business and for all sectors of the economy. We have in the digital decade, for example, a target of 10,000 climate neutral and highly secure edge nodes across the EU by 2030. Personally, I feel that we're going to need more, and we will certainly strive to do that. But this is a minimum number that working with industry that we've set as a target for ourselves, which will require public sector investment, but also a very significant commitment from the private sector. And we need you, the community gathered here, to ensure that they have the support, that they have the supply of new innovative technologies to actually take advantage, and also for their investors to identify a strong business case that will justify the investment and expenditure that is required. We want 75% of EU businesses using cloud solutions, not just the standard run-of-the-mill infrastructure services that many of us know now, but advanced cloud solutions at the edge, harnessing artificial intelligence for services and for platform services, for software and for platform services that will actually help European business to be as agile and
Estou quase a entrar, mas não sei se também está ligada nesta sessão.
Sorry, I'm having some interference on the line. I'll keep going.
Então diga aí, Ana Mateus, que eu estou noutra sessão europeia, mal acaba eu ligo-me. Aquilo era às 8h30, penso eu, não sabe.
So we have 5 targets, we have 5G targets in the digital decade.
Quase a falar na outra.
And what I'm seeing is in particular that while we had targets set for already last year, we must ensure that we don't just aim for 2030, but already that we are achieving our milestones on the way. By the end of 2025, 5G in urban areas and along main transport paths. And then, of course, by 2030, that we have 5G coverage of all populated areas. With the widespread 5G. At the same time, we're looking at the goal towards 6G. Now, some people think it's too early, and we are focused on the development and deployment of 5G. But what we must ensure is that we maintain our industrial leadership. And through the work done in the research community, that we are ready to actually present a credible standardization and industry roadmap for the development of 6G. To not only work with, but to stay on a level with our competitors in the US, Japan, China, and elsewhere. We need to act now. Deployment of advanced 5G and looking beyond 5G, but already doing the work with the research community and the equipment community on what will be 6G as a technology, as a service, as a platform. We must, of course, harness the efforts that have already started in some member states. Finland was already told to us by Matti, but in other countries as well, to ensure that we have a coordinated and concerted European effort, because it is only at scale, at European scale, that we will be as successful in getting there. So let me just mention briefly what the Smart Networks and Services joint undertaking will work on. Clearly, applications in order to seize the opportunities for all sectors of industry and the economy. I mentioned agriculture earlier on. The agri-food industry, but also the farming community are very keen to adapt and harness technologies. We need to ensure that they have the connectivity, the IoT sensors, and the processing power in real time to apply data to real-time management of crops, of resource usage, of environmental protection, of logistics and delivery to market. Essential for what was a sector which may previously have been considered to be traditional, but is now at the cutting edge of some technologies. Obviously, we need and want to have industrial leadership for Europe. That is in itself important because it is where there will be huge growth in the future, but also because the industry that this will represent will also represent a massive advantage for other sectors, totally removed from the ICT sector. That will then provide us with the open strategic autonomy, the digital sovereignty that Europe needs in an uncertain geopolitical environment. And lastly, but most certainly not leastly, allow us to achieve our societal goals, our sustainable development goals for the economy, for society, and of course for the environment. And that's what that partnership is for. Now, I won't go into these details, but it will bring together funding instruments that I mentioned at the start. So it's not just a research framework instrument. This must be understood. It will also seek to focus and to deploy money from the DEP program, which I presented, and of course for the rollout of 5G, the deployment of 5G, moving on to the serious applications of connected and autonomous mobility using the CEF, the funding, but also using funding available from other sources, including the member states themselves. We have to work on those areas where we are strong, but we also have to work on those areas where we may have developed some dependencies, including, as I've said, on the semiconductor, on the applications, on the chip within the device, which is so important for the next generation of communications technologies. And we are, with that, taking a value chain perspective, as I've said, ensure that in what we hope will be a global and cooperative environment for new communications technologies, that if necessary, Europe can stand on its own, supply itself, and compete with others, should the geopolitical situation ever, shall we say, turn bad. And that's really the end that I have to say. We will be giving more information, my colleague Peter Stuckman, at a Smart Networks and Services info session during a EuCNC on Friday. So please, I hope that you are there for that. And I'd like to thank you for your time and for your attention. And I really look forward to a great day.
Thank you very much for your words, Mr. O'Donoghue, and for these fresh European views. Now we will move, and I'd like to introduce to you Miguel Almeida, which is CEO of NOS Group, Portugal, and General Co-Chair of this conference. Mr. Almeida, please be our guest.
Thank you, Professor. I don't know. Yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this conference. The communications industry is experiencing exciting times. Technological developments of the past decades have been remarkable and will continue to change the way we work, the way we play, and the way we live in the coming decades. While countries around the globe progress in the spread of 5G, sadly not the case of Portugal, it may seem too soon to be talking about 6G. But industry and academia are already looking ahead to the future generation of mobile communications, dreaming big and envisioning what the world could look like in 10, 15, or 20 years. The potential of future mobile technologies is enormous, and 6G will bring another wave of opportunities. It's still early to tell how a world defined by 6G will materialize, but one thing is certain. 6G will be a key driver in the continuous development of our societies and a relevant contributor to enhance quality of life for all humanity. At NOS, we have lived with enthusiasm each new technological generation from 2G to 4G and now 5G, seeking to serve our millions of customers with the best quality and providing them with ever-enhanced services. At the present moment, we are focused in building a best-in-class 5G infrastructure to deliver the best services to consumers, to businesses and public organizations. And by doing so, we are building the foundations for a revolution that we will be able to further progress and accelerate with 6G in the future. As a communications company focused on continuous innovation, we are totally committed in embracing the power of new technologies to accelerate change and reshape our future, moving the world onto a more sustainable, inclusive, and responsible path. That should be, after all, the primary objective for any new technology, and I'm confident that will be the case for future mobile technologies. So I wish you all a very productive conference, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Almeida, for your words and for letting us know how NOS Group is committed to new generations of mobile communications. Finally, let me introduce to you Professor Manolito, the Portuguese Minister of Science, Technology and Higher Education, and thank him for honoring us with his presence. Mr. Minister, please be our guest.
Thank you very much and good morning, you all. First of all, we'll be very pleased to receive you in Porto, Portugal, and we hope that in the following months we can do it. This conference is important for many reasons, above all for its tradition over years and years of engaging the digital community, research and the entrepreneurs throughout Europe. And this year is rather important because we live in times for action. And actually that has been the full context of the Portuguese presidency of the European Union. We have launched Horizon Europe. We have just launched the European Space Program. We have opened up a roadmap for space traffic management and also launched the idea of new space for people under which satellite-based communications and the new generation of school communications for Europe will be a must in the years to come. And certainly, this is not just because of the technical breakthroughs we have been able in Europe, but it is more and foremost because we need definitely to guarantee that we build an European context which is certainly more digital, but also more green and more resilient. And we know that this can only be achieved if we seriously considered the opportunities for the digitalization, going from the emerging massification of artificial intelligence to forms of responsible artificial intelligence among many others, but also understanding the unique social contexts for Europe, as well as making Europe more and more a global continent where we attract and receive people from all over continents. We should also understand that Europe within the world context needs to understand our own demographics, particularly in terms of global demographics. And this again put an enormous responsibility on the process of the digitalization. We live in an Asian continent, but others, particularly in Africa, have a completely different demographics and actually are striving for food. Again, the digitalization of the food and agribusiness system will be particularly critical among many other issues, again, leading to the greening of our societies. The advent of hydrogen economy or all the issues associated with bioeconomy can only be put into place through digital networks and to the full integration of advanced information systems, including certainly forms of machine learning and artificial intelligence to make use of all these resources. For many reasons, you should also know that Portugal has become, in the last 4 years, the world's leading country in the integration of renewables in our electrical network. In 2018, we have about 4 days fully powered by renewable energy and 3 days in the last 3 years. And this again has only been possible because of the unique digital and systems characteristics of research institutions in collaboration with companies, particularly understanding and working on the complex dynamics of renewable energies, particularly wind, hydroelectrical, and more solar, and it's the dynamic assembling with the electrical network. And this is a clear example where research and competence building on digital skills are particularly critical for the greening of our societies. We have just learned about, or we have just listened to a long list of European initiatives and program for the coming years, 2021-27, certainly including Horizon Europe, Digital Europe, the Connecting Facility. Also, I will put in that list the new European Space Program, which do include an important and significant part on satellite-based communications, but among many others, we should also understand from existing joint undertakings, and I will call your attention for high-performance computing. Certainly, we all know how important it is to understand the advancement of information systems, particularly in terms of using and processing data, but we know that we rely more and more on high-performance computing facility. Actually, the Rome Declaration, signed by 7 European member states in 2017, in May 2017, has become a game changer in the European context for establishing high-performance computing. Since May 2017, we have been able in Europe to build the very first joint undertaking on high-performance computing, EuroHPC, and today we have already in place a network of 5 petascales machine in Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Luxembourg, Slovenia and Portugal, together with 2 other pre-exascale machines, and in the future we will have additional 2 exascale machines. Actually, next week on June 18, we'll organize in Minho, in the city of Guimarães, in Minho, Portugal, the very first meeting of the 5 petascales machine, actually towards an appeal of opening up a collaborative network throughout Europe for science and innovation in high performance computing. And again, this joint undertaking was the very first one, and it has become a reference for many other joint undertakings, as for example, the one on the advanced communications, that, as we have just heard from our colleague from the Commission. But we also know that we have a specific package in the years to come, the recovery facilities under the Next Generation EU program, which will facilitate throughout Europe, throughout every single European country, a new package of funding for the recovery. And certainly, if this is important, we should also recall lessons learned over the last year, particularly in terms of the evolution of European and world societies, either in terms of the digitalization or issues associated with digitalization. Today, we have not met in face, but we are already organizing face-to-face meetings because we have a vaccine. And the result of that vaccine was, again, much the result of the articulation of fundamental science with disruptive, innovative companies. And this is a lesson throughout all of us to keep investing in science, again, in close articulation with disruptive, innovative projects and entrepreneurial capacity to allow breakthroughs in our innovative effort. But we also understood more and more out of this pandemic that we live in a skilled society, and therefore building competencies and digital skills among the entire population has become an important issue, particularly for Europe in an aging society. And these do require more and more reskilling and upskilling of our aged population in a continuous and very pragmatic lifelong learning issues throughout every single European region, so that we don't leave no one behind. But we have also understood a third lesson, which is, I believe, is particularly important for the digital context, in particular, advanced communications, which is the regulatory context for Europe. And we have clearly understood the context under which we need to modernize much of the public procurement association with the regulatory context for innovation. I'm particularly concerned with this, for instance, for space and the introduction of new space issues, and therefore we have approved 2 weeks ago in the European Council the roadmap for space traffic management in order to move towards certainly building technical capacity throughout Europe, but also making an operational capacity fully used by Europe, and among many other things, to move towards an European regulatory framework for new space, for satellite communications context, and this will be particularly critical. But I would like to call particularly your attention to two additional lessons, which I believe are particularly important in the context of this conference. The very first is the social context for digital transition. The example, for instance, is contact tracing. Contact tracing has become a very successful power, again, in association with an European framework and European projects in many European member states, which have allowed us very skilled groups doing research and innovation in contact tracing systems. But we have understood that in some regions it worked very well, in other European regions it did not work, and particularly because of the social context and institutional context associated with digital transition. Again, this calls our need certainly to evolve on the digital and technological breakthroughs, but always to understand the citizen approach, particularly for the social and institutional context under which we need to understand digital transition. And again, this will be particularly critical for the topics which will be discussed throughout this conference. The very last point I would like to address to all of you is about open data sources. Certainly, we live in times of increasing digitalization. We are understanding the massification of artificial intelligence together with the need to move towards responsible AI, but we also have understood the need to have open access to data sources from biomedical areas, including cancer treatments or pandemic issues, but also in areas like biodiversity management, fire prevention, of urban mobility. And again, open access to data will be critical for the benefit of society. And this has become, again, another issue for those working on advanced IT systems. So again, I thank you all for your presence in this conference and the best of these working days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for your kind words, and let us know how committed is the Portuguese government with digitalization and communication area. So I would like, in the name of the organizers, to thank you all for your presence in this opening session and for your relevant support. Thank you, and let's close this session.